This episode of The Ride is brought to you by Farnam.
Hi guys, and welcome back to another episode of The Ride. This is Nicole.
And this is Michaela.
And this week we are sitting down and we are talking with Ryan Brushing, who some of you guys might be familiar with. He is an NRHA professional. He is going to be coming out with a video series on demand. He's been in the spring issue of the magazine. So we're super excited to kind of introduce you guys to Ryan and get a better feel for who he is and his background. And he was actually at the NRBC during this interview. So he was at a horse show and still found time to sit down and talk to us, which was so nice of him to do.
Yeah, it was a really great conversation, and I learned a lot about Ryan. I mean, I knew, some of his start, but I did not know the whole story of his riding experience. But it's very interesting how he gained all of his experience and his horse life in general, because he didn't start out riding horses. He wasn't in a horse family. So kind of gives some inspiration to those people who maybe feel like horses are impossible and that there is a way and they can get into it.
I think that's one thing I really love about learning all of these horse trainers' backgrounds is it's always really fascinating to hear of the people who grew up in urban environments and didn't come from horse families and had to find their way into the horse industry themselves and now they have made a name for themselves in the industry as a professional, and it's just always really cool to hear about the different um, stories and how we all ended up doing the things that we love to do.
Yeah, like you said, I mean, it's just we've talked to so many trainers where they've come from urban backgrounds and have dove headfirst into horses and learning about all of these people and not just the horse trainers, but the people in general who just have really cool horse stories. And so with that, I want to mention that if you guys have anybody that you can think of that has a really, really cool horse story and we should get their story out to you guys and learn more about them, because we love talking to the horse trainers, but we also love talking to people like you who are truly living their best Western horse life. So if you have anybody that you can think of like that, be sure to send us an email at horseandrider@equinenetwork.com.
As Michaela mentioned, we do have a new email address. So be sure to email us at horseandrider@equinenetwork.com instead of our old email so that we are for sure able to get your requests. But yeah, like Michaela said, we love anybody who has a really fascinating story. And if you're a listener of this podcast, we've had people on who have, gotten involved with nonprofits, whether it's a therapeutic riding center, working with veterans, working with Mustangs even. And then we've had non-pros that have come back after getting really sick and being in the hospital and going on to win, world championship titles. So we love hearing from people who have a really great story to tell and that are living their best Western horse life.
Absolutely. Well, I think from here we'll go ahead and dive on into this super fun interview with Ryan.
Admit it, bugs suck. They're the last thing you want hanging around your horse and stable.
Our friends at Farnam can help rid your barn of these annoying, filthy, disease-carrying bad guys.
If you're ready for the best way to protect your horse, your stable, and yourself, look to Farnam's no-fly zone solution.
The people at Farnam have discovered the best way to set yourself up for success is by fighting on all fronts.
With their three-stage approach of block, repel, and reduce, you can be sure flies, mosquitoes, and ticks are kept away.
Go to farnam.com, that's FARNAM, to learn more and to download a free copy of the Horse Owner's Guide to Creating Your Own No-Fly Zone.
Plus, you can find money-saving offers to help get you on your way to a fly-free zone.
Farnam, your partner in fly control.
Hi, everybody. Welcome back to another episode of The Ride. Today, we are here with Ryan Rushing, who is an NRHA professional horseman and also somebody who you've seen in the magazine and you're going to see on Horse and Rider On Demand. So we thought we would kind of introduce you to Ryan now that you'll be seeing more of him throughout our brand. So thank you so much, Ryan, for coming and doing this podcast while you're at the NRBC, sitting at your stalls.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me.
Yeah, we appreciate you, doing this while you're, in between trying to get horses ready to show. And it sounds like it is a little warmer in Texas than it is here in Colorado. So you made the right decision.
It is. I'm toasty in a light sweatshirt, so it is not bad compared to the snow and cold and all that good stuff at home.
So I guess to get started on this podcast, we like to go back to the beginning of how you even got involved with horses. So what was the start of your horse career like? Were you pretty young when you got involved, or how was the first interaction?
Well, so I'm the only one in my family that rides at all. And so when I was a kid, I always wanted to ride. I had friends in school that had horses, and I thought that was just the coolest thing. So I was probably in middle school, maybe 7th or 8th grade. And I had gone to Colorado with my grandparents and decided while I was there that I wanted to ride horses. And so I had this whole plan to convince my parents when I got home that they should let me take horseback riding lessons. And came home and made my pitch, and it worked for some reason. And I started taking horseback riding lessons then at a little place in our hometown, and it was just kind of a local. They went to little quarter horse shows, kind of whatever. But I did Western stuff in the very beginning, and then so I did that for about a year, and then that place was actually shutting down, and the horse that was there that I was taking lessons on. The gal was amazing, and she didn't want to see me just not be able to ride horses anymore. So she approached me and brought me out to her personal barn and let me ride her horse and take lessons with her trainer. And it happened to be dressage. So I took a turn into dressage, and I did that for 3 or 4 years and took lessons, did that competitively. My parents paid for some of it. I got a job at a vet clinic when I was in like 8th grade. I don't know if that was legal or not, but we knew the vet, so he let me work there. Started working to help pay for it. Took dressage lessons, and that gave me a really great foundation that I'm still very thankful for, because it really teaches you how to control a horse's body and how to work with a horse. And that set me up to make the transition into reining later easier. So I did that. I got bored of the English saddles, and I jumped to the opposite end of the spectrum and did saddle bronc for like a year and a half, and I was horrible at it. I basically just got bucked off all the time. So I was like, I need to find a middle ground here. And when I was in college, I took a job at a dude ranch in the summer and got connected with a guy in Colorado that started colts for a living. And I would drive over there on my day off, and learn to start colts and work with 2-year-olds and all of that. And then he offered me kind of an internship, which basically meant stay here and work for me for free for a semester, which I do now, so I get it. But I stayed up in Colorado and did that. I went back to school where I was at Texas A&M. Got into the horse judging team at Texas A&M and kept starting colts for people on the side while I was there. And that was really my first introduction to reining, was the horse judging team. Through that, I met a guy from Austria that owns a place over there and has a bunch of horses, and he did everything. He had reiners, cutters, cow horses, trail, everything. He offered me a job to come over there, so I took a year off of school. Went over to Austria. I had no idea what I was doing, and he sent me up to North Texas to ride with Greg Hall, now he's an NRHA judge, but he was training reining horses at the time, and gave me kind of a crash course for like 2 weeks. And then I went to Austria and was training reining horses and teaching lessons, and it taught me how to just make things up and be really confident saying it. So I remember having a lesson with a girl that was asking me about lead changes, and I was like, well, let's try this. Oh, that worked. Okay. Yeah, let's go with that then. So that was essentially my experience when I was in Austria. But it was great because it gave me an introduction to the performance side of the industry. And up until that point, I had been planning on going to vet school. I had actually applied before I left for Austria, and I had an interview scheduled, and then I canceled it and took a job to Austria. So I came back and decided that I wanted to be a horse trainer. And at that point in time, Nathan Piper was training in Madisonville, Texas, which was near College Station where I was going to school. And we were introduced through a mutual friend, and I would go over there when I had time and just ride with him, and he was a big help. And then when I graduated, my wife Amy and I got married, and then Nathan set me up with a job in North Texas. So we moved to North Texas, and I worked for Patrice St. Ange for about a year and a half. And then I went to work for Jordan Larson after that for about 4 years. And Jordan was great to work for. He taught me a ton. And then I started my own business in 2015. And then we've been doing that ever since.
I knew about the dressage background because we had talked about it previously, but I had no idea about everything else. That's quite the journey to get here.
Yeah. I took lots of twists and turns until I kind of settled on reining. It was like a pendulum swing, ended up in the middle.
Yeah, the saddle bronc is definitely the complete opposite of the dressage.
Yeah.
So,
I decided I wanted to be a cowboy, and then I decided I didn't want to be that cowboy, so I came back to the middle.
I'm sure your body thanks you a little bit for that.
Yeah.
But I want to go back to the dressage thing just because like Michaela and I bring this up so often on the podcast because like her and I both come from Michaela barrel races now, but her and I both started in the all around stuff. So you kind of learn that traditional horsemanship, how to sit, how to be quiet in your hands and your legs, and obviously the same for the dressage. And I think that's so huge because it just makes such a difference in the overall performance of somebody when they're riding a reiner. You can just, the people who have that classical horsemanship background, it's just so you can just tell when they're riding and showing, and they just make it look so effortless.
Yeah, for me, there's challenges to it because in dressage, and like my wife has a hunter jumper background, so when I was teaching her to ride reiners, everything that she wanted to do was like lean forward and grip with her legs. I'm like, okay, we need to do the opposite of all of that. And dressage is different but similar in a way because I had to overcome some of the body position pieces, but I feel like that's fairly easy to overcome. I feel like what is difficult to teach a person is feel, and how to feel what a horse is doing and how to manipulate that feel with your body. And that is what I feel that dressage taught me, is how to feel what the horse is doing, how I can manipulate that, how they respond to my body. So I've been able to apply a lot of the concepts to to maneuvers that I'm teaching a horse. And so I think that made up in some ways for the late start that I got in reining, because a lot of the guys that I know, I mean, they've been doing this since they were kids. Didn't go to college. A lot of them, they started training and working for trainers earlier. So when I came into this at 22, I felt pretty behind because there were like 15-year-olds kicking my butt. So that, I feel like that accelerated the learning process a little bit for me of understanding that. And so looking back now, I'm thankful for that. And I'm also thankful that I went to college, because I feel like that's given me a leg up in other ways over guys that didn't. Because my wife and I both work full time. I've got my business. My wife's a real estate agent. And it's kind of funny because I think a lot of people in this industry are used to a guy's wife like running the business and them just riding horses. So they'll come out to the barn and hand my wife a check, and she's like, "Okay, I'll give this a ride." I don't know. So I think going through college gave me a leg up in a sense, and I didn't even do a business degree, but just some concepts of how to run a business efficiently, and things like that would be a challenge if I didn't have that experience. So I had one of the girls that works for me. She's in college right now in her freshman year, and I felt like it was a loaded question, but her dad, through her, asked me if I thought college was important, because she was wanting to drop out and just train. I was like, well, that feels loaded, but I told her I think there's a lot that you can gain from going to college, even if you want to be a horse trainer, that might take you a lot longer to figure out or to struggle through with the business. So I feel like those two things, even though they weren't directly related necessarily to being a reining trainer, have benefited me in the long run, even though it made a little bit of a different start than a lot of guys get.
I think the education thing is huge, and we've talked about it with Bud Lyon too, who is obviously a good friend of yours. And the horse training aspect, like, while, you say horse trainer, somebody thinks that you're on a horse all the time. It's really, that's just one little piece of that business. There's so much else that goes into it that, that education just helps prepare you just a little bit more for going out on your own.
Yep, absolutely. Absolutely.
So, I mean, with the college and everything, you went to college, you did all of this, and you had all of the different experiences, but what exactly was it that drew you to the reining and wanting to become a reining professional?
Well, so originally I kind of thought I wanted to be a cow horse or cutting trainer, but then I reminded myself again that I wasn't a cowboy. So I was, something about the reining, there's just so much precision to it. And I'm very much a perfectionist. And so I love the detail and the precision, and a lot of the maneuvers that we do in reining at the surface level seem like they might be fairly straightforward. Like, okay, you're going to run and stop. You just run down the pin and pull or say, well, and they stop. But there's so much detail that goes into taking a maneuver from what's a zero stop to a plus half. And then it's like an exponential growth or exponential rate of return, you could say. So then going from a half to a one, obviously you have to have the talent and the horse, but there's a lot of work and a lot of detail that goes into taking that maneuver to the next level. So just training the maneuvers and working with another animal where you can't just force what you want to do on them. You have to make it to where it's where they want to do it, because otherwise it's going to come to bite you in the butt later. But if a horse is well trained and they want to do what you're asking them to do, like, that's when they go and really perform in the horse show. And so there's that connection that I think is a huge challenge, because it's not like just training your own body to go do something. You're having to communicate with another creature that doesn't speak the same language as you to do these difficult concepts and then, go perform. And so I think the detail of it, and the precision, and then I'm really competitive by nature. So I love horse showing. And it's not even so much, I went through a brief period where, like, when I was working for Jordan, I had some success and won, and then all I wanted to do was win. And then I was terrible for like a year. And Jordan actually sat me down. He was like, you need to chill and just focus on doing every step of the way, every maneuver you're doing, every little piece, doing it the best you can, and that success will come. And that's been advice that I really stuck to since then. And it kind of comes and goes, but but there's a mental side to competition beyond just preparing the horse over the years that we do, to when you are getting to the horse show, of what you're doing, what your mental side of that preparation, preparing the horse mentally and physically. And then when you walk in the pen and that you're being judged, and how you operate under that pressure, I love it. So it's super fun for me on all of that side of it.
So along with that, you said you had some success, and I know that sometimes it takes some success to kind of put you on the map, for a lack of better way of saying it, in the horse training world. So is there a particular horse that you had throughout this process that you're like, oh my gosh, this one really made my career so far? I mean, you're not that far into your career. You're still pretty young. So
Yeah, it's kind of gone in waves for me a little bit. Like when I worked for Jordan, I had really great horses to show, because whatever wasn't enough for him in the level 4, I would get, and he started me out slow, but then he was giving me really great opportunities. So I got to show, one horse was Stepping on Sparks, who Andrea had showed, Jordan had showed, Marco had showed. So I got the opportunity to show him, which was a ton of fun. And I still remember, like, I didn't know any of those guys that well at the time. But I still remember, like, Andrea watching me show him and talking to me about it. And I was thinking, okay, that was pretty cool. So I got the opportunity to show some really nice horses when I worked for Jordan's. I don't know that there was one that was like a game changer, so to speak. But what it did do was it gave me a lot of confidence that, I thought I was like ready to go. And I won enough to where I put myself just in the level 4. So Jordan and I had a conversation. He was like, look, you're not going to have a lot of horses to show here because you're just level 4. He's just level 4. So it was kind of the time to start my business. Hindsight, I wish I would have gone from there and gone to work for somebody else that I could have learned more, because I feel like I knew a decent amount about how to show, but I really didn't understand fully, and not that I do now, but especially compared to then, how to really train a horse. So there was a lot that was missing in my training program. But when I left there, I thought everything was just going to kind of click and happen. And it was several years of not being as successful as I wanted to. My horse is not riding like I wanted to, getting very frustrated. And yeah, I think you hit a point where you can either blame everything else or step back and say, okay, what am I doing wrong and how do I fix it? And so that was kind of a turning point for me. And then I started, my buddy Adam Hendrickson lives up in Colorado by me. So I started going riding with Adam. And we've been friends for a long time, but just getting help. And it's one of those things where it's uncomfortable, because at first your confidence goes from here to down here, because you realize there's a lot that you don't know, but you kind of have to rip that Band-Aid off if you're going to get any better. And so I started riding with him quite a bit and making changes to my training program, doing things differently from the ground up, I would say. And then I started experiencing a little bit more success, and my horses were showing better because they were, being trained better. And, that started making some changes. And then, I had a horse that my wife actually found her in the futurity sale, in the marketplace sale. She was a Magnum Chick Dream out of Miss Silvergun, who's a really fantastic mare. And, she was in that sale. I think a lot of people thought there was something wrong with her, but she just ended up in that sale, and my wife saw her. And so we ended up buying her out of the sale. She was going into her 3, she was 2 coming 3. And so I rode her that year. Wasn't really planning on showing her as a 3-year-old even, but she really stepped it up, and went and showed her as a 3-year-old. And she was actually my first level 4 open futurity finalist. And at the time, I I feel like my confidence was still not as high as it was originally from showing. And I had never made, I had made the level 4 finals at the Derby once, but I had never made it at the Futurity. And it just seemed like this unattainable thing. And I was actually thinking about letting somebody else show her at the Futurity, because I was, I was thinking, well, I don't know. She's a really nice horse. I don't know if I can get her to the level 4 finals. And my wife, God bless her, was like, no, we own this horse. You are showing her. So I showed her at the Futurity, and that was the first time I made the level 4 finals. And it really changed my perspective a little bit of like, okay, if I keep doing the hard work and keep learning and keep improving, like I can do this. So it gave me a lot of confidence. And I feel like she shifted my career a lot more to where I'm at. And honestly, I feel like I'm just on the early stages of where I want to be. But that whole process has taught me that, like, okay, you're not going to force it. One, you've got to have good horses, but two, you've got to just keep learning and keep improving, keep getting better, not thinking you've got everything figured out. So it's just changed my mindset on this whole deal a lot. And rather than being, overly confident or arrogant, I feel like it's made me more humble that, okay, there is still so much that I don't know. And it makes me enjoy the process more as well, because then it's like, okay, I don't have to know everything right now, but I really enjoy this process and making my horses better. So I'm just going to keep learning and keep figuring things out. So I try to ride with more guys and learn and have that mindset with my training more than, I know what to do. I just need to go show everybody what I know or whatever. And it's made me show a lot better too. So
you've talked a lot about your open level success and challenges and all that, but you also have, you have a ton of non-pros too. And that's a whole different mindset when it comes to getting a horse ready for the open versus getting a horse and a non-pro ready for the non-pro. Did you have to, were there anybody, like when you worked for Jordan or, any of them, did that kind of help you get ready for something like that? Or how did you prepare yourself to be able to work with, non-pros? Because you do essentially have to speak, coming as a non-pro, you have to speak a different language for us non-pros.
Yeah, I would say that one thing I've really learned coaching non-pros is that I have to work with them in a way that gets them confident. And I think it's the same way when I'm teaching like my assistant and what she's doing. If she loses confidence, then she's not going to ride as well. And if my non-pros lose confidence, they're not going to ride as well. They're not going to show as well. So that's one of the biggest things I've learned is I think they need to spend as much time on their horses as they can without, diminishing what that horse is doing. So finding that balance of how much the non-pro is riding versus how much I'm riding that horse is pretty key. And then having them ride the horse enough to where, it's like if no matter how long we've driven, you go to the airport and get a rental car that's different than the one that you drive. And I always drive out of the airport parking lot feeling like I'm going to run into something because it just feels different. But after a day, you're like, okay, I got this. And it feels normal. You're driving around like Andretti or whatever. But that initial introduction is like, if you don't spend enough time with that vehicle, whatever it may be, it feels foreign. And I think with people on horses, it's the same way. And even for me, like I ride horses all day and all kinds of different horses. I get on a new one and it's going to feel different. So being able to be confident enough to just go put your hand down and show, if you don't know that horse, it's going to be tough. So part of that, I feel, with a non-pro being confident is just them spending time on their horse. And I have my non-pros practice patterns a lot in ways that, they're practicing at home, but correcting things. So that they not only feel confident with the horse, but how to correct things and how to handle things. So that if something comes up in the show pen, they know what to do and they don't feel like they're out of control. So that has helped a lot, I think, with coaching. And then I just have to remind myself sometimes that like this is their hobby. This should be a fun experience. Like first and foremost, this should be fun. And I'm so competitive that at times I feel myself like putting too much pressure on people. And then that pressure doesn't, like, they put too much pressure on themselves and it doesn't go well. So if I keep everything kind of chill, I think it tends to go a little bit better.
I really love that you compared it to a rental car because that is something that I never even had thought about because I do. Every time I go get a rental car or drive somebody else's car, it is like the scariest thing. So then, yeah,
Yeah.
hopping on a different horse is like kind of that same feeling where you're trying to figure out where all the buttons are and like how to
Right.
turn down the music so you can see and
Yeah.
do that sort of stuff. And so, I mean, I totally love that you compared it to that, but then also the fact that, yeah, it's a hobby. And even as myself, like, so I know that they're probably thinking that too, that I have to remember that this is a hobby. Like, I don't make my money being in the show pen. Like, I have a job that I work 9 to 5 that supports my horse show habit. So,
Mm-hmm.
having a coach that understands that and isn't like, oh my gosh, you have to go and win when it's something, I mean, of course, we all want to win. That's like what we all want. But having a coach that understands, like, I put my money into this and I want to win, but if I don't, it's a hobby, and
Yeah.
keeping the pressure off makes it a little bit easier to go out there and show with a clear mind.
Right. Right. And I don't know. This always bothered, and Jordan was never this way, but I would see other trainers that like they would come up to you and uh, talk about their non-pros like they were idiots because they couldn't get some concept that we spend 12 hours a day trying to learn. And that always bothered me too, because the people that are doing this for the most part, they've been successful in some other industry. It's businessmen or women, it's people that have done something in another industry and obviously are smart enough to be successful in that and have the money to spend on a hobby like reining horses that's not cheap. And so it bothered me when there was kind of an attitude of disrespect towards non-pros through that. And not everybody is like that, but I did see it a fair amount. And so I feel like that has tried to shape my approach as well. That okay, yeah, so they don't do this every day. They don't understand it to the degree that I do, but they're not idiots. Like they're smart people, and they need to be treated with respect. And I feel like that that's something that I think we need to do with our horses, non-pros, customers, whoever it is. It needs to be an attitude of respect first, and then that competitive nature comes second.
I've heard those conversations too. I spent a lot of time before this job. I was working, I was trying to get into it professionally and then realized that a 401k and paid time off and benefits are really nice.
Yep.
So I went the other direction. But yeah, you do hear that a lot. And I still hear it, as I'm just kind of sitting in the background of things. And it is really disheartening because you're right. Those people are successful in other industries, and they're they're not riding 12 hours a day, but they're smart people. They're doing it. And also, I think we kind of forget as an industry in whole, and not just NRHA or AQHA or whatever. I think everybody. The non-pros are why we get to do the things we get to do. Horse trainers wouldn't have a job if they didn't have non-pros that were giving had horses in training that needed help. If everybody was so good they could ride their horses on their own, nobody would have horses in training.
Right. Yeah, and I have non-pros that joke about that every once in a while, and they'll be doing something and they'll look at me and they'll go, "I'm screwing this up, aren't I?" And it's like, no, it's fine. They say, "Well, it's job security. You'll be okay." That's fine.
Another thing that I really love about your approach to horse training, outside of you kind of mentioned this with the horses, similar, it still you have to have that fun atmosphere. You have to make it enjoyable or else they're going to get burned out, people and horses. I remember right before you went to the fraternity last year, you posted on your Instagram or something that you were loping your 3-year-old who we had used for the videos demand. You were loping her in the pasture, just like letting her enjoy herself, like right before the fraternity. And that, I mean, basically that stuck with me because here I am bringing it up 6 months later, like an Instagram post that you did. But I love that because I think that's so huge. And I'm a big believer in that too. I take this cow horse that I'm showing, he's won about $50,000, but I still make him go swimming in the reservoir and I still make him go into the desert riding. And, it's important that they're horses.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, absolutely. I don't know. And it's just little things like we've got windows on just about all of our stalls at the barn because it's like you said, they're horses. They need time outside. They need fresh air. They need to go ride and just have no pressure, go enjoy, be sassy, whatever. And I think it's important for us to remember too why we all got into this. Like I got into this because I just loved horses, and that took me down the long path of being a horse trainer. And it's easy to remember or to forget sometimes. And I think it would be easy to think of them as just a tool or a means to some end that we're pursuing. But I had a horse that she just passed away like a month or so ago, but she was the first 2-year-old that I started. I got her when I was actually that summer when I was working for the Colt Starter. Some people that I'd worked for in Texas gave her to me, and I took her. I mean, I tried to make her into a reining horse. I tried to do all kinds of stuff with her, but she was like foundation bred, gigantic Hancock thing. But just a horse, just a great horse. Like I took her on a pack trip on the Continental Divide, did all kinds of stuff. And she just smelled like a horse. And I don't know what is different about it, but the horses that are in stalls that are eating alfalfa and everything else, they smell different. She was out living in the pasture, but you could go just smell her neck and be reminded of like, I remember when I was, 10 years old and all I wanted to do was ride horses. And so I think it's important for us to remember that. But yeah, that particular horse, everybody gives me grief in the barn because I spoil her rotten because I love her. But she's a 4-year-old. I showed her last year as a 3-year-old, and she's just a fantastic horse. I love her. But at that particular time, I was leading up to the futurity, so the pressure's building. It's like you're trying to make everything just perfect, but some horses you can feel that like they're putting so much pressure on themselves that something's going to go wrong. And I was riding her and I could just feel like she's just overdoing things and trying too hard and overthinking things. It's like, let's go lope in a hayfield. And it's funny how it changes them because she went and loped and had fun and ate grass, and the next day she felt great. So I think there's a lot to that mental and emotional side of horses when it comes to horse training, and people, same deal, that sometimes they just need to go right outside.
Well, I feel like, when you say that she was putting too much pressure on herself, a lot of people don't, think about that. Like the horses, they want to do well. They want to do well for us,
Yeah.
and they want to do their job really well. So, sometimes we just forget that they do think like that and they want to be successful like we do. So they're like overworking and overdoing things. So when we listen to them and we're like, okay, let's go lope in a hayfield, I think that, makes them last and it makes them enjoy their job.
Right. Yep. I agree.
So you're currently at the NRBC. By the time this podcast comes out, that'll be done with. But what horses do you have with you? How many did you bring?
We just brought 5 down. I've got one to show, one of the 4-year-olds that I showed last year is a 3-year-old. And then my wife is showing a horse, and then I've got a customer showing 2 in the non-pro derby, and then one youth kid showing. So it's 5 is kind of nice. It's a lighter horse show for us, but it's
that sounds like a vacation.
yeah, it's pretty nice. And the horse I'm showing, I know him pretty well at this point, so he's not terribly difficult to get ready, but it's going to be interesting because I think this is probably the toughest horse show in the country, and so it's difficult with a 4-year-old, but yeah, it's a great horse show, but it's a tough horse show. It's a big pen, lots of great horses. We got 4, 5, 6, and 7-year-olds of the best horses in the country showing. So it'll be a challenge, but it's gonna be fun.
That is the one big reining event that I have not been to, and I want to go so bad because everybody says that it is the most fun out of all the horse shows because it's just. Yeah, it's the toughest show out of the year. And especially now that they're letting the 7-year-olds compete. I mean, it just, it changes the game when you're showing a 4-year-old against those 7-year-olds.
Yep, absolutely. And I've never made the level 4 finals here. I've made the level 3, but so that's my goal. So when this comes out, we'll see how it goes. But um, but yeah, I think I don't know, the futurity and this one are different, because the futurity, it's more, it takes a really good horse, but it takes a really consistent horse to go 2 goes, have a high composite, make the level 4 finals. It's a different kind of consistency, I would say. So this one to me takes like the best run to make the level 4 finals, which is it's a great challenge. It's a great thing to aspire to. So that's my goal here, and we'll see how it goes.
Yeah, the consistency in the 3-year-old thing, that's to go that many rounds with a 3-year-old and be consistent during all those rounds, that's takes a pretty special horse. So I can definitely a different kind of competition. But anyway, good luck. If our listeners want to learn more about you, where can they find you on social media and your website? And obviously Horse and Rider On Demand, there's going to be lots of video content coming out. So
I think probably going to get this wrong, but on Facebook, it's Ryan Rushing Performance Horses. Instagram, it's just rrushingph. And our website, I think, is rrushingph.com. So pretty sure that's it.
Perfect. If it's not, we'll add a correction at the beginning. So if there was a correction at the beginning, you guys know why.
Yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you again for taking time out of your day while you are at one of the busiest horse shows of the year. We really appreciate it.
No problem. Thanks for having me.
Once again, we'd like to thank our sponsor, Farnam, for bringing you this episode of The Ride.
Thank you guys for tuning into The Ride podcast. We hope you enjoyed this episode, and please be sure to subscribe wherever you listen to podcasts.
Follow Horse and Rider Magazine on social media and find us at horseandrider.com. If you guys have any questions or comments, please be sure to hit us up at horseandrider@aimmedia.com. We want to hear from you guys.
And if you like what you're listening to, be sure to leave us a review on iTunes.
How many stars, Michaela?
5 stars, please.